Hi and welcome to CSM Tech. I'm Peter Briggs. Today we unveiled plans for building a headstone for Jimmy Hogan, who was an ex-Burnley player. He lived in the town and had an unmarked grave in Burnley Cemetery. Jimmy's career spanned a number of clubs in Europe where he taught a different style of football that has been predominantly used by European sides ever since Jimmy taught them how to play the game. He's been established as being one of the most important characters in developing football on the continent, and he was a local Burnley boy. Here is my interview with Heart Radio today.
Thank you so much. So do you want to start with where you started this journey with Jimmy Hogan and what you found, how you found him as well? Because I'm guessing it's quite a long journey that you have been on to find out.
Yeah, we were working. I was working in the army. I've been in the army. I just got out of the army a couple of years ago, and I would travel home and listen to audiobooks. Very interested in football, huge Burnley fan, and I was listening to an audiobook called "Inverting the Pyramid," which is all about the evolution of tactics in the game and how offside came in and how the pioneers of the game at the turn of the century started to change the way that we played tactically where we get to our game now. And they had a whole chapter on Jimmy Hogan. And in the first sentence, he was like, oh, he was born in Burnley. And I nearly crashed my car at this point. So I was like very surprised that I'd never even heard of this guy, really. So from listening to that chapter, I went away and did a bit of research. I bought a book by a guy called Norman Fox that was released in like the 70s or something, maybe 80s. And it had this story about who Jimmy was and how he traveled out of the UK in order to show the Europeans there's a different way of football. In the UK, we had two different styles of football. We had the Scottish style, which was a very short passing, more team-orientated game. And then we had the English game, which is very direct, very individual based, where people would try to dribble with the ball rather than pass it around. And so there was this clash of styles. Jimmy Hogan was more akin to the Scottish way of playing, which I think he developed down at Fulham, actually, not here at the Turf. And his playing career hadn't been brilliant, but he took those ideas over to Europe, who were a lot more accepting of different ways of football. And he ended up managing the Dutch side. He was involved in the Austrian and Hungarian side. The Hungarian side, there was the first team to beat England in 1953 at Wembley. First foreign side, sorry. And they not only beat England, but they absolutely massacred England that game, just by their fluid, fast-paced football. And he was held as the archetype of the style of football a lot of Europeans play, and that total football. So if you look back through Beckenbauer and the team of the 70s, you can trace it back to Jimmy Hogan. As far back as you want to go, back to like 1914, 1915, when he was stuck over in Europe during the First World War. So that got me interested. I then wondered where he was, because I'm obviously chairman of the Turf Moor Memorial Garden, so I wanted something for him at the Turf. So I came across, well, I was looking for his grave, and we found a rough area, but no one knew where he was, and there is no grave there. So eventually my dad found him, actually. And so he's next to his parents, but he's in an unmarked grave with his sister, his brother-in-law, and her daughter, who he lived with for the last 12 years of his life. And I just felt that was really sad, that we had this pioneer of European football, this great, person that we'd exported from the UK, from Burnley, he was born on Victoria Street in Nelson. He lived on Brunshaw Road. And he'd made such an influence across all of Europe, and in Europe he's held as some sort of saviour, and we just don't even know who he is here in the UK, really.
Gosh, and it's incredible that it's down to you and your dad to actually, like you listen to this one podcast and all of a sudden you end up finding this man's grave and being able to give him almost like a proper send-off and somewhere for people to actually go and see where he's buried. It's just incredible that it's literally come from you listening to this one thing and now it's ended up here.
I think that's what all these things happen from, though, isn't it? You know, I mean, you just get a bug, and then all of a sudden you go and like explore and find something. And I suppose it's every kid's dream, isn't it? I mean, it's a bit Indiana Jones-esque, isn't it? You go and try and find something, and then it's not there, and then you've got to make it. But I mean, it's like a little bit of an adventure, isn't it? It's quite cool.
And as well, you've kind of touched on it then. How much of an impact has he had on the sport? Like, what would things have looked like if it wasn't for Jimmy Hogan?
I think European football would have been drastically different. The ideals that he brought into Europe, I think the fast-paced, intricate, tic-tac football that Pep Guardiola employs at Manchester City now, that might not even be as it might not even be a style of football now, or it wouldn't have been as far as advanced as it is quite now. So I think his impact on those sort of people is probably immeasurable, really. He grew, I mean, he was very, he wasn't kindly looked upon by the English or the English FA. The English FA were very harsh with him. He got stuck in Austria during the First World War, and he was held for a period of time as being a potential spy, because obviously he was English, and we were at war with Germany and Austria at the time. And he ended up building a club, MTK, from nothing. They said, oh, as long as he goes to a local police station, can he come and teach us and how to play football? And so he won people over just by his understanding and knowledge, and kept everything really simple. That's his genius, really, is that he didn't overcomplicate football. It was just movement and passing.
And I've also seen that you want to give him a tribute in the Memorial Garden itself as well.
Yeah, obviously we've got the memorial walls. I've got a couple of former Burnley players on the wall, sadly. I've got Jim McIlroy, and I've got Peter Noble on there, and Frank Teasdale on there. I mean, it'd be nice because we put them in gold lettering on the memorial walls. When they played for Burnley, they're held with a special memory, really. And then we've obviously got the Brian Miller Memorial, which is just for Brian.
And why is it so important, to remember him there as well? Because obviously, like you say, he did have an impact, maybe not necessarily in Burnley, but he is a Burnley guy.
I think it's just his influence. We're a very small town in a vast country. We've got the club is playing Premier League football, and we really don't. We're rubbing shoulders with Manchester United, and we're a small town. You can fit Burnley's population in Old Trafford. That's a usual trope that's rolled out all the time. But we are a very small mill town club that's punching way above its weight. There was a poll that was held of the 10 greatest managers of all time, and 2 of those people came from Burnley. You had Ron Greenwood and Jimmy Hogan. Now, if that's not, how does that work? That we've got 2 of the greatest English managers of all time, and they came from a very small town in the middle of the Pennines. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Our influence goes beyond the borders of our little town, and if we understand how much of an impact one person had from Nelson on the world football, then hopefully it's an inspiration for everybody in the town to think that they can think beyond their own means right now and what they can aspire to be in the future.
And I think as well, from all this, not only are you able to, give him that sign over his grave and the Memorial Garden tribute, but it also teaches so many more people actually all about him who might not have ever heard about him, like yourself at the start of all.
Yeah. I must admit, I'd not really heard of Jimmy Hogan. I might have done, but it might have just been like in passing rather than something that I concentrated upon. And I'm a Burnley fan for the last 35 years. I'm giving my age away there. But just that importance that of somebody that, and I think we ignore a lot of our pre-Second World War heroes. So Tommy Boyle and Jerry Dawson and George Beale and even Jimmy Hogan. They're just almost lost to us because we have no generation that remembers it. I think everyone remembers the team of the 60s, mainly because we have that generation still with us that are still telling us about how important that generation was and that team of the 60s and obviously the team of the 70s with Jimmy Anderson and stuff. So there's a lot of Jimmys, isn't there? There's a lot. I have noted there's a lot of Jimmys in this. So that history is more known, and so what. Ray Simpson started this. He was the club historian at Burnley, and he was talking about how we sort of forgotten what made us the town that we are now. When we were pioneers, we were one of the first founding members of the Football League. We're one of the first teams to have a professional team. I mean, our greatest defeat was against Darwin, and that was because we couldn't play a professional side. We had to play an amateur side in the FA Cup. I mean, I think they got beat 11-0 because it was all the cricketers that had come to play for Burnley rather than the actual team. So we're pioneers. We were pioneers. We won the FA Cup 1914. And I think we've lost our way. I think what we've done is we've believed our own demise, really. We've felt like we are downtrodden and that we're just a working man's town, and we've been left behind by the country down, in poverty and stuff. And we started to believe it. And what we should start realizing is how important we can be to not our own area, but in the entirety of Europe, really.
Yeah, and just be proud of the people that we've created. Like, yes. Jim, you had such a massive impact.
Yeah, and it's no accident that a lot of those players. Jimmy Mack came from Ireland, and he played at Stoke, and he came and stayed in Burnley. After his career, he came and lived in Burnley. He was a Paul Syke. How many players have come from all over? Brian Miller came from the northeast, came and settled in Burnley, stayed in Burnley. All these players, and I speak to a lot of the vintage Clarets. So I spoke to Roger Eli on Friday night about this, and he holds Burnley so close to his own heart. He still turns out for the vintage Clarets. So does John Deary and all those players from the '92 team that won the championship. They all still hold Burnley in such a high regard, and it's mainly because the town cares. The town actually cares about its football team.
And they'll care about Jimmy now that they learn all about him, I'm sure.
Yes. Hopefully we will, yes.
Thank you so much. That's all my questions, unless there's anything else that you'd like to add.
Oh, no, that's all perfect. Thank you very much for that.